Miami, 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 Miami. It feels like Miami.
Welcome to the Heat Beat Podcast. I'm your host, Giancarlo Navas, and with me today, Heat Twitter president and host of the Hangover Time Postgame Show right here on Miami Heat Beat, Alf.
We really need an opening video for this. It's so awkward.
Just bobbing, dog. We're just vibing.
I know, but it's because the worst thing is coming into our headphones in a different. The timing's off. We all look like we're off beat. It's super fucking awkward. That's why I just look away. I just look off screen.
That's the next step of this production. We're going high.
We've only been doing this for what, like 6, 7, 8 years?
We're year 8. This is season 8 of Miami Heat Beat.
Wow.
This is season 8. On the left of the screen, and if you're a pod audience, this is a nice surprise. Friend of the program, Miami native, culture correspondent on ESPN, Jorge Sedano.
Do you start every show going, welcome?
Yes.
And
all
that stuff?
8
like
years
the
strong.
Kooky broadcaster stuff?
Yeah.
Does that happen every time?
8 years strong. My camera
and his camera does that several times a show.
What the hell was that?
It just go. I have a special driver for my Canon, and it just decides to do that once a show. I don't have an answer.
I mean, I guess it's also you, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like it's like the perfect. Like Alf seems like his situation is very stable. Yours seems completely unstable, which is kind of the exact dynamic I should expect on this.
I mean, that's been
Correct.
the formula for years, George. You know this better than anybody. You've been coming on for years. This is.
What were you yelling one time that people have posted on Twitter? I'm interviewing you now, which is funny.
Yeah.
So Parakeet Cortez, that fraud, he posted something one time to me, and it was you screaming "Say it to my face" or something like that.
Yeah, it's tweet that one more goddamn time. I dare you. I swear to God. And it's funny because I'm actually talking to Brian Goins, my producer, because he doom tweets during games. And I was just sick and tired of it. And I was just doing a rant and I yelled at him. And Brian keeps sharing it on Twitter, which I find embarrassing. I don't really like when we share those. They're just like, they're just in the moment, George. And then Brian shares them and then, and then Cortez is aggregating them, put them on Instagram.
I mean, it's funny. I didn't know what it was, but and Cortez is doing this thing now where he's like tweeting me while I'm literally working at a game. So I can't actually hear it until hours later. You know what I'm saying? So like he tweeted some video the other day of him like acting like it's me talking, but it's his voice. And he's like, I don't love Cuban bread, and I love the Clippers and Lakers, and I'm not really a Heat fan. I'm a vegan, blah, blah, blah.
You don't like Cuban bread?
Yeah, I don't not eat Cuban bread. I just generally don't eat bread very often anymore. Not particularly white bread. But
you really are LA. Wow.
No, it's just also
carb-free diet, Jorge Sedano?
I'll give you a little life lesson. Find yourself a podcast called Lifespan. It's eight-part podcast. It's by a doctor named and nobody came for this, but I'm just going to.
This is what we're here for.
Anyway. Dr. David Sinclair. He's like this Harvard professor, MIT scientist, and he's like incredible at understanding like how to. He does all these experiments first on animals, then on humans about how to extend your lifespan. So I am a huge advocate of the podcast, and I am much healthier since listening to said podcast.
That's kind of like Hangover Time. Same,
right? It's the complete
just like
opposite of Hangover Time.
Same concept.
But I'll tell you this: in that podcast, he does say that if you want to drink a lot of, you can drink red wine because it's got some thing called resveratrol or some nonsense, and he says Pinot Noir specifically. So maybe the next time I join you on Hangover Time or whatever your little shindig is called, I'll just be drinking red wine, which I think I did once when I joined.
What does he say about Crown Royal?
Probably not Crown Royal is my guess. Although I get it, really, it was all about the sugar content. Like the higher the sugar content, the worse. So
guy sounds like a quack to me.
Yeah, no, listen. I'm gin and tonic all day. So
I have a 100-year-old grandmother who drank Crown Royal to the day she died.
Chat's already calling on arrepentido for the Cuban bread
thing. She could have lived longer. Arrepentido.
Yeah.
I will say this though.
Chat.
What's that?
Fez Butter in chat called you an arrepentido.
Oh, that's funny. I want to live a long time, man. Like
you want to live a long
for a good
life.
time, not a long time.
Well, I think you can do both, though. Like, I think that's possible. Like, life is about balance to me. It's why I think the Heat are good, because they have a good balance.
What a great segue.
Oh, what a transition.
As Nikias in chat says,
professional.
Where's the basketball talk? That's what we're here for. Sedano coming off his...
listen, Nikias, who I love.
I know. I've heard how much you love him, George.
The second time today I'm saying I love him.
Yeah.
He knows this. I texted with him today. And he thanked me for the shout out on the Low Post podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, like he said he was doing his best. I said, no, you're doing great, but your best is still to come. Like, there's still a long way for that kid. And he's incredible. Like, there are, obviously I listen to you two clowns all the time. But I mean, I listen because I want to laugh. I watch his stuff and listen to his stuff because I will learn. Like, he's incredible. So Nikias, thank you for watching and putting up with the nonsense, and we will talk basketball now, or some version or variation.
Before we get into basketball, now that you brought up your appearance on the Low Post, I brought a clip. Right, we're doing Jimmy Fallon. I brought a clip of your appearance today. So let's take a listen to what George said today on the Low Post.
See, Nikias Duncan, who's a Heat.
I love that kid. That kid. First of all, shout out to that kid. And actually, I want to give props to Ethan Skolnick, who covers the Heat for a long time. He covered it as a traditional journalist for a long time. He's got his own thing going, 5 Reasons Sports. He's the guy that saw Nikias' stuff on the internet and gave him an actual platform that then led him to where he's at now, which is Basketball News, I believe.
Yeah.
Alpha, are we not a platform?
I guess we're chopped liver over here.
I feel like a platform also needs like a more all-encompassing thing. Why, was he with you first?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
no, I didn't know that.
Yes, he was. Yeah, no. So yeah, I was Alpha. I was like, that's so nice of George coming on not a platform today to talk hoops with us.
But that goes to show you how much I actually like you two rascals. That I would actually come on your non-platform.
You had Ethan texting me apologizing for your mistake.
No way.
Yeah.
Promise.
That's my guy, dude. I love you.
No way.
And that's nice of Ethan. After I bothered him on vacation, I called him and prompted on a Sunday, and he's like, "I'm on vacation with my daughter. Is this important?" I'm like, no.
You not watch the man's IG
He
story?
posts a lot.
I mean, right. I mean, you got IG. I mean, well, I'm a bad IG person, but I don't post enough. But generally speaking, yes, that is the window to the soul these days.
Yeah,
you can see what people are doing.
That's legit. So let's, you were on to talk Heat with Low, and that's what we're here to talk about. Because, George, I said preseason, and maybe this was kind of reactionary, but they played with an edge in preseason that I hadn't seen them play with since the Big Three. There was an urgency. There was PJ Tucker diving into the damn courtside seats, like getting loose balls in preseason, and they had a bit of edge, they had a bit of nasty, and it felt a little different. And in preseason, I was like, I think this team's going to be a lot better than any of us anticipated. And lo and behold, right now in March of 2022, the year of our basketball Lord, they are 2 games, 2 or 3 games up on the second seed with a bullet. They have a top 10 offense and defense. Their half court offense is a lot better than advertised. They're like 12th or 13th via cleaning the glass in their half court sets, and they haven't been healthy all year, George. And I understand that there are concerns of, they don't have a legit kind of go-to bucket getter. And I think that the bigger switches, like the teams like the Celtics and the Raptors, and when teams can switch size, you saw Maxi Kleber kind of switching out to Jimmy, kind of showing some of their warts. I think that those are legit concerns. But every team has warts right now in the Eastern Conference. And George, I don't know why they're not the favorite other than the Bucks won it last year in the East.
I would say they're not the favorite because the Bucks won it last year, and because I want to say, I don't have the exact number, but the Bucks are something ridiculous when their Big Three play, like 25 and 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
And Giannis is getting better still. I think that that's part of it. I still think that the Heat have this in regards to defending Giannis and the Bucks is they have Bam. And I was watching Around the Horn today, and they were doing the Heat and Bulls, and I was going to call Frank Isola and say, you clearly have not watched Bam Adebayo play very much, because he was saying that Giannis owns Bam or something. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I was like, no, actually, Bam defends him better than anyone in the league one-on-one. And yes, the last series was a disaster. Okay, I get it. And you can chalk that up to a million different things, but the end result was they got their asses kicked and they got swept. So no excuses. That's not what this franchise is about, and we know that. But historically speaking, when you just look at the last several years, Bam has done an incredible job. So I like their chances there. And I do think that Milwaukee, before the deadline, I felt like they had enough depth where I would say, man, that's a toss-up 7-game series. As ridiculous as this is going to sound, because it always boils down to the stars, but I feel like Milwaukee lost some depth that I would be like.
The DiVincenzo loss?
Yeah, the DiVincenzo loss to me is big, especially against Miami for whatever reason. I always felt like he seemed like to have a pretty good game. Yeah. And I think that their depth is not as good as it was pre-trade deadline. So I think that hurts them a little, but obviously Giannis, that's stuff in the margins. Like, to me, it's about, can you keep Giannis from just destroying you? And it's kind of like prime Shaq in a lot of ways. Can you just limit his effectiveness to the point where it's not just him destroying you and everyone else also going off, right? Like, you have to find a way to limit something. And I think the Heat are certainly capable of doing that. They've got, as Zach and I talked about on the podcast today, I think they have the best playoff type defense anyone in the sport could have, because they've got so many guys they can mix and match, whether it's, Jimmy and Bam and PJ. Let's just use them. Like, look at what they did yesterday against the Bulls, where they had Bam and PJ switching on the DeMar DeRozan Vucevic pick and rolls. PJ sealing Vucevic with no problem, it felt like, for a good portion of the game. And then Bam kind of eliminating DeRozan, or at least making it way tougher on him, where he scored 18 points on 16 shots. Not to mention, you have Jimmy Butler playing on the weak side, kind of roaming, playing free safety. And to me, if that's that little triangle of death is the worst thing for opponents, when Jimmy particularly is in that position where he can freelance. And that's what when we saw their success in the bubble, there was a lot of that, okay, where Jay Crowder and Bam could switch and Jimmy can kind of swoop in for a steal or play the lanes or just kind of stay back and then, attack from the weak side, like as someone was attacking the rim, and swipe the ball away, whatever it was, block a shot. I think there are a lot of things they can do when they've got that kind of triangle style of defense with those three positions particularly. And then we know Kyle can defend his ass off. And here's the thing, like, Oladipo is going to come back here next week, as Woj mentioned. I happen to think it's going to be Houston, because that's the softest spot in the schedule.
That's the 7th, right?
Yeah, it's Monday. So why not? And I've heard only great things about Oladipo's recovery and rehab. And I mentioned this on Zach's podcast today, is that I've also heard that Markieff Morris could be back sooner rather than later, which is obviously needed. Now, it may take him a while to get back into a little bit of game shape, but that's needed just in case, God forbid, PJ gets into foul trouble. And even here, the last couple of weeks of the season, the last 5 or 6 weeks, you just need another body to spell him, because he's 37 years old. So I just like the way they can mix and match on defense, with, especially if Oladipo is what I hear he's going to be, and they can even substitute any of their shooting out, right? Like, I mean, in theory, you don't want that. You don't want Tyler and Duncan both off the floor, or you want at least one of them on the floor. But if they had to go this crazy all defensive unit, you can do that and take out the one shooter in Herro or Duncan, even though Hero's not really just a shooter, and he's actually a better mid-range guy than he is.
And they like the handling. And Spo is always kind of going
right. Yeah. He's their best finisher. I mean, I think that's not even up for debate anymore.
Finisher at what? Like at the rim?
Closer.
Oh, okay,
like
okay.
Finisher of games, yes. So, because just he's got the shot profile to hit any shot. It's just a lot to ask of a third-year player. At this, he's 20, whatever, 2 years old, whatever he is. But they can totally bring out this like all defensive unit of Victor for either Herro or Robinson with those other 4 guys, and they can just swallow.
They've already done that with Caleb. Sometimes, like those, when Tyler was out, they would go those guys.
No, I get it.
And Caleb's
been good, but I mean, Victor is If Victor's healthy, he's a
Caleb
better
just gives you a size that I think in the Warriors game in particular, you kind of saw how he can offset some of the other stuff by just being really long and kind of playing them kind of defending guards, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Alf, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I think George is right that I think the thing that's cool is that Spo has a ton of options this season. So you talk about you're down 8 with 3-4 minutes left. You got Tyler in there. You're up 8 with 3 or 4 minutes left. You throw in Depot for Clamp City. Like they have so many offense defense switches that they can do. Where like last year, like your options at point of attack defense were like Kendrick Nunn or Goran Dragic, or Trevor Ariza, like the corpse of Avery Bradley was somewhere on the bench. Like was Mo Harkless. Like they were so limited last year, and this year you look at them, and this is a question for George, because I think a lot of people have been talking about what's the playoff rotation. If you're talking 9-10 men, there's guys that are going to get squeezed out. Where like last year you were looking for a 7th, 8th guy. You couldn't even find them. And this year, you're talking about guys like Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Caleb Martin that might get squeezed out if Keith and Depot are healthy. So
okay, if Keith and Depot are healthy, yes, I think Strus for sure.
Yeah,
gets
Strus
squeezed.
is the first guy out.
Yeah, and then I think Martin's probably the next guy because
I disagree there.
Okay, well, just hear me out for a second. I think Martin could be the next guy, although I don't see him completely out of the rotation, perhaps. I think that he probably gets minutes shaved. Because I think Gabe is now the traditional, like he's the backup point guard basically at this point. So if you're going to go, if you're bringing back Oladipo and Markieff Morris, then I think that it's going to be between Markieff and Caleb Martin, and it's just going to be about Spo and what he feels on that given night.
I feel like Markieff might be used like how he used Olynyk in the bubble run. Like some matchups, some match. Like if they play the Nets, I don't really see a lot of Markieff because they're their best stuff is a little smaller. And,
sure.
And like the Celtics and the Raptors, but like maybe against the Bucks, I can and the Sixers.
Oh yeah. There are going to be matchups that you need him for sure. I don't think there's any question. So
what do you guys think of like the whole Brook Lopez situation?
Oh, I've heard. Again, I'm not reporting any of this. I'm just saying I've heard that there is a remote possibility that he's back for the playoffs.
George, when they traded for Ibaka, to me that signaled they weren't sure.
I just said remote.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They're holding out hope.
Yeah.
But I think that it's an insurance policy basically.
Because that's a guy that bothers the Heat a lot, that bothers Bam a lot.
Yeah.
And I just without Brook Lopez, without PJ Tucker, I feel better about that matchup against the Bucks than I did last year, especially because if you look over the last 2 years, 5 wins for the Bucks, 4 wins for the Heat, right? So we can talk about the sweep last year. Yes, it was a debacle, it was an embarrassment, and like you said, no excuses, but there are reasons, right? And then the year before, the Heat embarrassed the Bucks, and when I look at that matchup, what Brook did to Bam last year was the biggest, and also Jimmy just not having any legs at all. But what Brook did to Bam last year is the one that really sticks out to me. And without Brook in that matchup, without PJ Tucker, you're relying a lot on Bobby Portis, who has big moments, but he also can disappear for huge stretches. He's not the defender in my mind that PJ Tucker is. And then, like you said, the DiVincenzo thing to me is huge. They don't have Bryn Forbes anymore, which we all know he outscored Jimmy.
Oh my God, Bryn Forbes had Danny Green vibes from like this.
No, Gary Neal, George. You have to go.
Oh, Gary Neal. Yeah, that's a good one.
Because Danny's Neal, like
Danny Green had a historic performance, but yeah, Gary Neal had like that annoying performance. Yes.
Yeah, I'm without. Also just the stuff on the switches. Kind of when they close out with the smaller guy Lopez shooting over him really comfortably and easily. So that's.
Do you know there's only one team in the NBA that switches more than Miami right now?
Boston, right?
Yep, it is.
Yeah.
It is Boston. Yep.
Which I liked what Scalabrini said on Lowe's Pod talking about the Heat Boston game and how Caleb provided kind of the one time that the defense looked shaky where he was able to take Time Lord off the dribble like pretty consistently over, and that's kind of my thing on kind of Caleb in the rotation, George. He's a bit of a connector for them, and he makes plays above the rim on both ends. They don't have that springy, bursty athleticism. He's like the guy, right? And he's shooting well enough. I don't know if I know that his percentages are good. I don't know if you want him shooting a shit ton of open threes, but he's hitting the open shots he's getting. He's a release valve on the offense. He's really, really good in transition for them. And as a defender, they need those wings, especially. I think the East is filled with these teams where you're going to need wings to switch to. I mean, you have Durant, and then everything that Boston and Toronto's doing. You're shaking your head.
No, I'm saying you're right. Like,
okay.
right. Like, I'm just thinking, like, the East is going to be a freaking bloodbath, man. Like, there's it doesn't matter who you're facing. Like, the 1 seed is not necessarily. I mean, granted, you get the home court, right? But like, that's not like
these matchups suck.
Easy. Right. You're going to get Toronto or Brooklyn, maybe Atlanta. I guess, Cleveland could fall out, right? And I
don't want to play Cleveland.
Huh?
I don't want to play Cleveland.
I know they're beating them there in the regular season, but
no, I know, but like they're going to be a pain in the ass, like 6
No,
games.
they are, but
Yeah.
that's a 5-game series. Like, stop.
Ooh.
They're not losing more than 1 game to Cleveland,
sure.
especially with
Jordan
Derek
with the
Barnes.
guts.
I'd rather play Brooklyn. I was like, Cleveland scared.
Are you out of your goddamn mind?
Cleveland scared the fuck out of me. I watched those Cavs game and I was like, oh man, that Jared Allen guy. He scared me, George. He scared me.
What are you scared of in a playoff series?
They're
one
really
thing is in the regular season when you see them on a back-to-back or you're on like a 5 games and 7 nights,
guards,
whatever the hell it is.
No, I mean, I'm part of that.
Kevin Love has never missed a shot against the Heat.
Oh, God,
at least in the last 5 years.
Listen, that is a 5-game series. That's not Cleveland is not beating anybody. Chicago, by the way, has to be very careful of who they play in the first round because if Brooklyn, who is I think they're 4.5 out of the 4 seed, it's not that far out.
Schedule is brutal, George.
Right, but I get it. But if KD comes back on Thursday, like people think for the Heat game, that changes the dynamic in a big way. So,
but who should Chicago be looking for in the playoffs? Because I don't see a really good matchup.
They need to hope it's Cleveland, like 4-5 or something like that. That's probably what they need to hope for. Honestly, if you're anybody, you just want Cleveland. Like that's what you want. You don't want. I don't want Toronto in the first round. Like
someone's going to die in that series.
Yeah, Nick Nurse. No, I don't want to deal with that. Although the basketball dork in me would love to see Nick Nurse against Spo, but I don't want to see that. I mean, you want Atlanta to sneak in or Cleveland. I don't want Boston either, for that matter.
So Jaylen Brown actually just suffered a leg injury.
I know. I saw that.
Hopefully he's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, George.
He walked off on his own power. So
yeah, Atlanta's like not a fun team to play either. I mean, like again, that's a series that you.
But they're not getting out of the play-in. They're not getting out of the play-in.
Well, and even if they do, like they're not that good this year.
I guess George. My point is that
I got killed on Twitter
Orlando
when
Magic.
I said Boston. When I said Boston is legit, I got killed.
Why?
People are like, oh, well, because everyone remembers the first month and a half of the season.
Right.
Like, have you been watching since the beginning of January?
Right. They have the best
point differential
in the entire Eastern Conference. Right. Like, like that didn't happen by accident,
When they were in the 8th or the 9th seed, they had the best point differential in the East, and they've just been climbing. I mean, they're 8-2 in their last 10. Like, they are for real. Now, the Jaylen Brown injury,
that's a big deal. Yeah,
that's a big deal. But I mean, everybody, if you miss somebody significant, except for the Heat, I guess,
you're crazy. The Heat have had 74 minutes with their best lineup out there. That's wild. Zach said the number to me today, and I was like, I didn't realize it was that low.
And they're minus a ton because most of those minutes came against in the 2 Utah games where those leads were blown. So it's like you can't even do anything with the lineup data because you're like, okay, well, those games were just weird.
Right.
George, are you concerned about the Heat's everyone keeps talking about their crunch time offense, late game offense. Are you concerned about that, or you just think that'll work itself out in the playoffs?
It's funny because that was one of the things that we talked about. Zach and I were talking about. His biggest concern, right, is their half court offense at the towards especially towards the end of games. And I echoed that with the sense of they've blown a lot of leads. And now, look, that's fairly more rampant now in the NBA than it's ever been because
a 20-point lead is nothing anymore.
Right, because the 3-ball changes everything, right? Like, I think that, you stop somebody for 3 or 4 possessions in a row, all of a sudden it's less than a 10-point game, right, potentially. So I think that has changed the dynamic some. And the Heat have had a lot of those issues. And I think that the majority of those issues, by the way, have not happened when Tyler has been able to help finish those games off for them. So it's why I think he's ridiculously important at this stage. And it's funny because I get my buddies in my group chat like label me this Tyler Herro hater because I'm like, because they're obnoxious like you guys. They're like, they're literally like, we won't trade Tyler Herro for anybody. And I'm like, will you stop?
That's not us. Alpha and I were trading him last season for anybody. We're the opposite.
Right. But I'm just saying they're obnoxious.
Trying to get Spencer Dinwiddie up in here.
Yeah. They're just obnoxious like you two, but not specifically to that. And it's just like, he's really good. Like, I'm like, you guys make him out to be like, you know, a top 75 player of all time. You know, like he's not that. Like, let's slow down. And so, but he's really important to what they do. I don't think there's any question.
But what he does, George, I think he's a run stopper. Like he's the guy when everything seems to be falling apart and the offense can't do anything. One guy is Jimmy. Like between the 8-minute and 4-minute mark of the fourth quarter, it feels like Jimmy can get whatever he wants. Yeah. And those last 4 minutes, I don't know what the hell happens to him.
Well, you got to get to the free throw line. That to me is where he's most effective, getting to the free throw line.
But I feel like Tyler is like, and Goran used to do this a lot. Like the offense is going nowhere, and somebody just has to hit a little mid range, drive into the lane, hit a little floater. I think Tyler does a lot of those. They used to call it relief points with Bosh because Bosh used to do that a lot. Like, okay, nothing else working, give me the ball at the elbow, and I'll hit a jumper. Right. And I think Tyler does a lot of that for them. And I think that's what helps them in those crunch time minutes. Yeah,
for sure. So, he's really important. By the way, Duncan is still really important. I know that everybody was off the bandwagon on him.
Not us.
They're coming for you, George.
Huh?
They're coming for you.
I don't care. I mean, again, same group chat. I've been telling my dummy friends the same thing all season. They're like, oh, you're not worried about Duncan yet? 0 points in like 3 games. And I'm like, no, not worried about it. You know why? Because nobody's hit more 3-pointers the last 3 years other than Duncan. I mean, no one's hit more 3-pointers than Duncan other than Steph Curry. So it's like, stop. He's fine. And by the way, I would basically go back since just maybe right around Christmas time. He's like at 40% basically since then. So
ever since his streak was snapped, when he was like 60-something games with a 3, he's 40% from 3 since then.
Yeah, but by the way, I also want to shout out Mike Ryan for being one of those guys.
They literally just said George is 100% talking about Mike Ryan.
No, I was literally talking about my friends in my group chat, but also I just remembered I also have Mike Ryan in another group chat, and then he's one of those guys too. But he's also, as I love Mike, he's also the guy who once thought Tyler Johnson was better than Goran Dragic and fought with Amin about that on air once. So there's that.
I mean, Lowe pointed out, and listen, I don't know when I
listened to a Lowe Post episode.
Yeah, I actually listen to Lowe Post all the time.
Shocking.
I try to act like I don't listen to anything else.
Good.
Zach is great.
Really good.
Zach's my favorite.
Fun. Zach is funny. Zach is funny. Zach is like, he's very self-deprecating. I think Zach is a great host.
And it's a good show. And like he said today, and one of the things I've been saying, and I think anybody with a half a brain will tell you that gravity is real. Mm-hmm. And whether Duncan is 2 for 5, 2 for 10, or 8 for 11, the other team respects him like he's about to hit 12 threes every game.
Well, and literally what Spo tells him. And that's what Spo predicates the offense on. But people don't grasp that concept. Like, it's really hard for them to understand. Like, no, he's 0 for 8. And it's like, so what? Everybody's running to him the second he shoots the ball. You know what I mean?
And he's doing a lot better job this season of finding Bam after that DHO instead of just swinging around the perimeter. Also, because Bam's being more aggressive, rolling to the basket. Yes. He's finding Bam with those little short bounce passes right into the lane, and Bam is taking it in there and scoring. I think we're underrating his ability to pass. We're underrating his ability to defend. I think, and Lowe was talking, you were talking about it, that there are going to be some times where he might be in that closing unit if they need to score, if they need, if the offense is really, in the mud, he's going to be out there. The Charlotte game, he's had a couple games where he's closed and he's looked good.
There's no question about it. He's unbelievably important no matter what the dip bleeps on Twitter say. Yeah.
George, what do you think about their late gate offense? Because I have some concerns about it as well, but I started to think about, well, why exactly do they struggle in the half court late? And it's because teams kind of put their more switchy units out there. They kind of put size, and then they kind of switch Miami's actions, and then Bam's not really a post-up guy, and they're just not going to slip you.
Well, they don't have enough shooting on the floor usually in those situations.
That's the other thing, and they play with 2 non-shoot. So they have a litany of issues, but I think the most probable thing is when they can switch size with size, So you're blowing up DHOs, which is really their kind of bread and butter in a lot of their offense. And then when Jimmy can't pick on a small, then at that point it's like, well, where do we go, right? And I think what bodes well for them is Milwaukee's always going to play a guy that it's always going to be a Connaughton out for Milwaukee. They can't manipulate their lineups in such a way that like the Raptors or the Celtics or the Mavs, where you saw like, okay, Jimmy's picking on Luka, we're going to get some size in and we're going to send help and we're going to vacate the guy in the dunker spot or whatever. And the teams at the top of the East, Chicago, they're too small. Lonzo's guarding fours. There's just, Jimmy's always going to be able to kind of find the small guy. The Nets, there's going to be a ton of small guys on the floor, right? And like we said, the Bucks and all these teams, even the Sixers, not that, you want to post up James Harden because that's kind of letting him off the hook.
That's actually where he defends really well.
You don't want to let him off the, but there's going to be other soft spots of that Philly defense that you can go at. So I'm not as concerned because I think their problems are not going to be like present in their biggest competition, like their biggest competitors in the East.
It's fascinating when I look at like the landscape of the East. Like I've not been a big believer in Chicago the whole season, and I've said this repeatedly, and I know people take this personally. Like if there's some random Bulls fan, like they get really mad, but it's like if I told you at the beginning of a season that your best three players are Nikola Vucevic, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan, you're not telling me that's a championship roster. You know what I'm saying? Like you're telling me it's a good roster. I would buy that. I'm surprised they're like a 1 or 2 seed at the moment, but I would tell you that's a legit playoff team. Probably fighting for home court advantage in the first round. They're good. You know what I mean? I think Billy's a good coach. So, like, I would buy into that. And I do like Lonzo, and I like Lonzo probably more than most people. But and I'm a big believer in Caruso because I got to see it up close, what he did, not just to the Heat, but what he did throughout his entire tenure, basically, with the Lakers. Like, he was really important to their defense. But I just don't think, like, you got to have a combination of stars and depth. And I don't think they have enough stars, right? Where I think Miami has enough stars and enough depth to beat pretty much anyone if they wanted to. So I look at Miami and I say to myself, yeah, they're very Spursian, right? They're like a mix of, Haitian and Spursian. They had a baby, and it's like this team, basically. Because, and again, it's not a perfect example, but when you look at those Spurs teams back in the day, like obviously Duncan is incredible, right? He's one of the greatest players ever. And Manu was great, and obviously Tony was great, but they had so many smart, high IQ guys on that roster, even beyond those guys. So you've got kind of not an apples to apples, but you've got a kind of version of that where their system with really good players on top of that, like all-star caliber players, are going to just work you to death, right? And that's why I think the Heat are dangerous. And they also have kind of a Spursian feel to them because, it's why Zach and I did this podcast and why he asked me to come on and invited me. And I was very thankful of it because he's like, they're under the radar. Like nobody's talking about them. It's kind of stupid. Now, it's true. Like most people don't talk about them. I know Stephen A. Smith on First Take. I actually saw him today because he actually mentioned, he's like, I want you to tell people that I've been saying we're going to South Beach for the conference finals. And I was like, okay, I will absolutely relay that message. So I will do that for you. And, I know Kendrick Perkins has been a big Heat proponent. And guys are coming around. I saw Wilbon and Kornheiser today talking about the Heat. We don't want
Wilbon.
Yeah. Well, he was he picked the Heat to win the East at the beginning of the season. Okay, well, whatever. I'm not gonna let you disrespect like one of like the greatest journalists in sports.
He's great. So. Alf, did you forget about 2010? I didn't.
I mean, I don't care anymore.
I'm gatekeeping.
I'm not still mad about the Derrick Rose.
So anyway, but people are starting to come around now because look, they see the mix of what I just talked about, and let's not forget the greatest weapon they may have, arguably beyond their, the players are obviously great weapons, but it's Spo, right? Like you get it. LeBron said it when he came to Miami this year, right? When he was asked the question by whoever it was about like Spo and having to play them in the finals and, when he plays them or whatever. And he said, like, look, say what you want. Like Spo, I know Spo knows me. Spo's one of the greats. Like you give him any time to prepare and he's as great as anyone that's ever coached in this game, right? Like, so, and that's the truth. Like you give Eric any time to prepare, and it's going to be, and he's got the players, like you're going to be in like deep crap, like in a series against them. So I think they're in good shape. I look at the rest, like Milwaukee, we've already talked about, like they're a champion, and Giannis is getting better, and he's got two perfect compliments to him.
They're the
in
final
Middleton
boss.
and Holiday. Yeah, for sure they're the final boss. Agreed. They're like, Super Bowser or whatever you want to call them. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then, look, Philly, you can make the case that they may have the two best players on the floor in any given series, but I feel like they traded away a lot of depth. Okay. Like the Seth Curry thing, I know people think I'm crazy when I say this, but that thing to me, I didn't love. I get you had to include somebody, right? And you didn't want to include Thibault and you didn't want to include Maxey. And I get it because those two guys are good at what they do. And I'm a huge Maxey guy because I met him during the draft process. And not only did I fall in love with him as like a player, but I fell in love with him as a kid. Like he's just such a nice young kid, like really good dude, unbelievable family. Like the stories he was telling me about, like riding around in a van, like playing AAU, just like incredible stuff. He's like a yes, sir, no ma'am, yes ma'am kind of kid, like just great kid. But the depth, not as great as it was. And Thibault can be played off the floor, although he did a really good job against the Knicks, I thought, recently. And if that's the way they're going to use him, it makes more sense.
Everybody does a good job against the Knicks.
Cutting, spot, right? Like, I think that there's some things there, but their depth, not as good as I would like it to be. Brooklyn is the huge wild card in all of this, right? Look, if they're healthy and they got all three of those guys, I think Ben actually fits better than James does with those two monsters on the wing.
I agree, George. I agree with that, and I heard G just with the like.
I'm so out on Ben.
The best place for Ben to
score,
be.
Johnny.
That's what I'm saying. All he has to do is defend, distribute, and in the last 8 minutes of the fourth quarter, he does not have to shoot the ball once.
Right.
Like he might get a putback.
Here's the thing with them. Like in Philly, they would occasionally put him in the dunker spot, but it didn't work because it was too clogged.
The help's easy.
I know, right. Joel occasionally flares out, but that's not where he's going to do his damage, right? Like, so
you want him to shoot.
But in Brooklyn, he can absolutely play the dunker spot. And to your point about distributing, he's a really good passer, man. Like
one series made us forget who this guy is.
Right. And in the two previous seasons, nobody, and I repeat, nobody created more open looks for threes than Ben Simmons did. So now you're talking about this guy he's a top 3 defender in the league. Like, I was at a game where it was them against the Mavericks. And it's funny, I've been to a lot of like strange Philly Mavericks games for work because I was at the one recently where they had the 43-minute delay because the basket got
my God, I remember that.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But I remember him playing against the Mavericks, and I have never seen anyone give Luka more trouble than he did. And he knew it. Like, he was looking right at him, and he was just like, that's what he said to him, And Luka was just like, whatever, like just kind of walked away or whatever. And like he is a legit top 3 defender in this sport. And again, he's got those two monsters. Now, getting to the monsters, the biggest predictor of future injury is past injury. And that to me is what would be scary when it comes to Brooklyn. It's why it's just so fragile. The whole thing is so fragile. It has the highest ceiling of anyone, but also the worst floor.
I mean, look at them. They've been in a free fall for what is it? The last 6 weeks? Just
well, that's without Durant.
Injury.
Yeah, it's
right.
Well, that's
but,
what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right. But
they have the lowest margin of error for any team in the East. That is a contender.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, if the NBA had its druthers and they were on truth serum, the final 4 they would want is a combination of Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Miami, and Milwaukee. Like that's what they'd want because that would be the ultimate like battle, basically. But the whole thing, as we've talked about, is going to be crazy.
So I like the Philly match. I like the Brooklyn matchup for Miami because it simplifies their switching stuff, right? And they can put like those big like lengthy guys, and you can kind of do what you can against Durant. The Philly matchup, I feel pretty good about. And George, one of the interesting things to me have been, so in seasons past, they would front Embiid, and then they would send a lot of help, and then they would rotate, and then they would live with the result. that has not been the case this season. They've largely guarded him one-on-one. They send a little help sometimes late. They kind of mix in kind of when they come or not, like Spo teams, right? They just do, they throw off their timing. But they've largely played that matchup straight up. And part of me wonders, is that just them saving stuff? I mean, the game on Saturday, I think, is going to be really tough. Because Embiid is just, because I think he gets in a rhythm, and then he's hitting the one-leggers, and then you're just like, all right, this is over.
I mean, look, he's the best player in the sport right now this year. Like, he's the MVP. I mean, he would get my vote.
Chad wants to know if you're going to vote Vamp or Depoy, are you a Hollywood coward?
I actually said that today on the Low Post, that I think Bam needs to get more love for Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah, actually, it would have been Draymond had he stayed more healthy. I just think he's missed too many games.
And
now,
the Warriors
so
are good without him. Their defense, I think, is still
not
top
really
3.
though. They're 14-10 though without.
No, but
him.
like but that's because of the offense. The defense, I think.
Yeah, but their defense was good last year when all of those guys were hurt. So like, I get that, but the wins part of the equation has been way worse when he's not there.
Absolutely.
So I think Draymond would have been it. I'm not a Gobert guy. Like he can't guard the perimeter, man. You know what I'm saying? Like I get he's great at what he does. Don't get me wrong. Like he's and Quinn has done everything he could to maximize that. Like I think Quinn Snyder is actually a super underrated coach. Like I think he's really damn good. But
he has a well-oiled machine.
He does.
It's like it's a monster.
But
he also
I
looks
think
like a Batman villain, but that's
he does look like a Batman villain. A cartoon Batman villain too.
Yeah.
I think Tyler Herro, I mean, everyone knows he's gonna be the sixth man of the year. That's fairly obvious at this point. I would vote Bam.
Not to some, George, you'd be surprised.
Get out of here. Who would be? I mean,
people are pushing the Kevin Love. Shout out to Jackson Frank, friend of the show, really nice guy, was pushing the Kevin Love. And listen, Nikias very sneakily was like, I wouldn't discount that.
No,
you know what? I'm so sick of.
I'll tell you this:
the year has been a bucket getter off the bench for as long as I can remember. Like, why is it changing now? Now we're going to use advanced stats for the sixth man of the year.
Now Kevin outlet passes per 100 possessions.
I'm going to look it up right now. What the odds are in Vegas? Tyler Herro was like minus 800 or something like that. It was ridiculous.
That award's done. He's going to win. This is
zero chance he loses sixth man of the year, barring like a catastrophic injury like tomorrow.
Do you think Spo gets coach of the year? I think this is as good a chance as he's had since the Dion year.
No, I don't think so because he doesn't care, as we all know.
He needs to win it one time, George.
He technically tied with D'Antoni. He didn't win the actual award. He won like the writers award.
He won the coaches award 1 year.
Oh, the coaches award. I'm sorry. Yeah. The writers went to D'Antoni, and the coaches award tied with him and the coaches tied with him and D'Antoni. And so he's won that. I mean, that award goes to like the team that exceeded expectations, right? Like, so it's going to be like, Memphis. I don't know, Billy Donovan or JB Bickerstaff, and that's fine. Like those guys can win it. Like it doesn't matter.
But hasn't Miami?
Guys, real quick, Goran Dragic has 10 points against the Raptors right now. And Raptors Twitter is calling for Goon Squad to take his legs out.
They hate him over there.
They hate him. They hate him.
Of course.
So it's funny. I was doing NBA Today last week when he was traded. I was on the show where he was traded, and we had a graphic behind us because we have this huge LED board that's like, I don't know, like 12 feet high and like 20 feet across behind our desk. And it was a picture of him in a Raptors uniform. And I literally pointed behind him like, can we change that to like, I don't know, any other uniform? The Heat, the Suns? Like, I mean, he's never even played with them. Yeah, like seriously.
How did they even get that picture? I mean,
they clearly photoshopped it, but like whatever. You know what I mean?
A rare sight.
George, Gogi, nicest guy. I think he's the nicest player I've ever spoken. Him and Jay Rich, nicest guys I've ever spoken to in a locker room. And when I'm honorary Raptors Twitter, and they hate him. Yeah. And I was like, don't say mean things about him. I love him. And they're like, you're with us or you're against us.
It is so funny how all the Twitters like have their own like little code you have to break to like understand them.
I broke rank.
Like, obviously, I deal with the Lakers a ton, and they are by far the largest. It's not even
George. They're a cult. George, they're a cult. They're crazy.
It's a lot. I don't know about that. I mean, they love their team, dude. Like if you would have won 16 championships, you'd love your team the same way. You know what I mean? Like I get it. It's no different than like Yankee fans in baseball. They're insane. But like it also is great though. Like that's what you want. You want an engaged fan base. It could be worse. The flip side, where I live in LA, it's the Clippers, there's like, a few people,
They have
like
fans.
literally like a gaggle of people.
Or the Denver Nuggets. Like they were showing Denver Nuggets local TV ratings, and it's like second to last above the Magic.
Although the Denver Nuggets, like media guys, like the bloggers are really good. Like those guys know, like they're really good. Like the Denver Stiffs, I think is one blog. And then there's another one, DNVR, that's really good. Like those guys, like they actually do a good job covering the team.
And Nuggets Twitter is just like a bunch of unwashed hikers that come into my mentions anytime I talk about Jokic.
That's mean.
Shout
What's
out
wrong
to,
with hiking, man? I go hiking almost every day.
No, you don't look like those dudes.
like
they all
that.
have they're gross. They're wearing
who
brown
looks
New
like someone
Balances.
who's been hiking for a month right
They
now.
have vests with fish hooks in them. It's just
Have you been to
You know who looks like he's been hiking for a month for the last like 6 months? Aaron Rodgers.
oh god.
George? Did you see
He
the
looks
tweet? I forgot.
greasy and
I forgot
gross.
where he might have been accepting his MVP award or something. And he looked funny. And someone goes, he looks like he's on his way to a Triceratops tooth auction. Absolutely fucking killed me.
That's funny.
God,
That's funny.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. What else? What else you got?
chat.
By the way, what is this purple light in the background? What is that?
My light. That's I put little cabinet lights on my thing, and I have like Vice. I have a live sign. It's like Vice.
No.
colors.
What is on the cabinet?
That's
what
my.
we really
Those
want.
are my. So those are my Sound Euphonium Blu-rays on the right. We have Fate Stay Night, Heaven's Feel at the top. Karno Kyokai, Review Starlight under that. Just
Are those like anime things?
yeah, they are.
Do you see how many you had to say so much shit for George
No,
to figure out
each
what
shelf
you were
is a
talking
different
about?
thing. Yeah, no.
You're like my yoke yaka, and George is like, what are you talking about?
Somebody said.
I didn't know
Alf.
what language you were speaking in first.
Japanese.
Like, what is that?
Somebody in chat earlier said that I'm broadcasting.
You and this anime. How is that anime podcast going?
It's going well. I have a YouTube channel as well. It's
Do
been
people
a little
watch
dormant.
that thing?
Huh?
People watch that?
It does. It actually has more subscribers than Heatbeat, I think, which is funny.
And how long have you? That's pretty funny.
Alf once said incels need things to do as well.
They don't like basketball.
So like when you didn't you have like a separate Twitter for anime or no?
I do have a separate Twitter for anime, yeah.
Yeah.
I do because
Thank
I got
God
bullied
once in a while
off
he
of it.
forgets.
Because I would just
Thank
tweet
God
it.
I don't follow that one. I mean,
No, that was
It's
sad.
sad.
The regular one is enough.
They hate my takes over there too. Like they think that my takes are awful. They just say just stick to sports. I swear.
And we tell them to stick to anime. So
stick to anime. Earlier, somebody in chat said that you guys have sports memorabilia in your background, and I'm broadcasting from a Hello Kitty museum.
Yeah.
Is that an
And
Emmy?
you
in the back?
are. I have an Emmy. Yes, right
Yeah,
there.
you
Right
have. I
here.
have Blu-rays.
Oh, nice.
So we're clearly not the same. Chad also wanted me to ask you, why did you steal Yurt Seven's number? Nakaya said that we
Actually, he
need to do
stole it
journalism.
from me. He stole it from me. I gave him 77. So the story on that is in 2013, when I got the job at ESPN, the Heat, Pat and Mickey and the whole, Spo and Tim
Brain
and everybody
Trust.
there, they sent me as a gift. They sent that to me, and there's an inscription at the bottom that says, "Always a member. Congratulations, good luck at ESPN. Once a member of the Heat family, always a member of the Heat family." And it was very nice. And they sent a nice note. It was very nice. So I have it. So yes, 77 was the year I was born. So I found it hilarious when Yurtseven had the number, and
What are the
yeah,
odds?
I always tell people I gave him that number. He paid me off so he can use it.
At least the jerseys of the Heat, because I see Lakers pictures back there. Well, you talking to?
Oh well, there's pictures. Look, hold on. I'm trying to point the right way. Is it this way? Hold on. Let me see.
What's
I just
above the
wanna
Laker
mention that's-
picture?
Up here?
Yeah.
Up here's Dwayne.
77 is also when Yurt 7 was born as well.
Me and Dwayne doing a sit down right there.
Oh, okay.
If I go, hold
Show
on,
off.
this way. Is it this way? No, this way. There's me and Dwayne somewhere else, right there. Yeah, right there, above next to the lamp. That's me and
yeah.
Dwayne at his last game at Staples. There's Giannis right there. There's AD. They're just the LeBron and AD just happen to be lower.
And the yellow just sticks out.
Yeah, the yellow, the purple and yellow, purple and
yellow-
gold,
purple.
as they call it,
Excuse
tends
me.
to stick out. But yeah, but there's Dwayne there twice in very close proximity.
Chad says you built a shrine of yourself.
Actually, I did. So it's so funny. I am not a picture person at all. It's why I suck at Instagram. But my wife's like, so when I do these games, the league sends me these pictures, right? Like, and they because they'll take pictures of when I'm interviewing people, right, and post them on their own social media. And my wife's like, you have all these pictures, like this room is like super bleh. Like it's just like there's nothing on it.
It's just an
And I was like, she's like, look, there's these things, these mix tiles. Why don't you buy that? It's super easy. You send them the pictures, they'll ship it back. So that's what I decided to do. Because she's like, you do something cool for a living. You may or may not do it forever. So you might as well chronicle a cool part of your life. And I was like, hey, you know what? That's a good idea. What the hell? Why
Alpha,
not?
let's do the same with you. But except it's
No,
just
the
pictures
story
of Kelly Olynyk, because that's I have
this. Well, if you guys want to hear the story behind my jerseys, as I just got too fat to wear all of them,
and you had to just hang them up.
so I just had to put them up.
the band was that was a gift from Casey Bannerman.
Well, the band one was a gift, yeah, but the rest of them I just got too fat.
Yeah.
So,
Listen,
So yeah, that's it. It was my wife
wear
who basically said, you do something cool for a living. Why don't you like document it some more? So it's funny. I've got that on this side, and then in front of me, because I usually do the my radio show from home, and then I'll do sometimes like Sports Center stuff from here as opposed to like having to drive over there. And then in front of me, in the wall in front of me, is all like family stuff, like my wife, the kids, my mom, my dad, my brother, my sisters, like all that.
Not
stuff.
as exciting
like,
as
friends.
Tom
There's the Levitard wedding photo that I have put out on social media in the past from Dan's wedding. There's all those pictures are here in front of me, so I get to see them. I don't care about seeing myself doing interviews with players, so I leave those behind me.
Chat
Hawk
said
has that photo with him photoshopped into it. I don't know if you know that.
Who's that?
he said
I
Hawk.
said
that?
Hawk has a photo with him photoshopped into it.
At Dan's wedding?
Yeah,
That's funny.
That's actually
funny.
hysterical.
real
I saw when
inside,
Mike Ryan-
super inside.
Yeah. I saw when Mike Ryan announced that he was taking another position with
Yes.
Metal Arc and not the executive producer. Hawk wrote, he
I'm
did
back.
the "I'm coming home" thing. Yes. That's
That
funny.
shit killed. I asked. I got to tell you, I was excited. Chat was. By the way, thank you guys in Twitch chat. You guys have been amazing all season, and you got us to our sub goal for the month, which means next Hangover Time, Alpha singing Pepas live with the musical accompaniment. Alpha, you excited? Have you practiced?
No,
No. Do you know the words?
there's Peppa's in there.
George, do you know Pepas? Are you familiar with the
I mean, I know
Pepas?
the song, but I don't know the words. I know
But do you know
I
what the
beat.
Heat do? The Heat are like playing.
Yeah,
Pep-
when they're blowing somebody out, and when they're basically the other team is waving the white flag, they play the song. Yes,
It's incredible. It's the best
I
thing
mean,
that they've been doing.
I watch the games. You can hear it. I don't know if you realize that. There's
Listen,
volume.
you're in LA. I don't know what life's like over there.
Before we let George go, can we talk about the Lakers a little bit? Because
Please.
it's one of my favorite topics. What the hell is going on over there?
So, I mean,
Is DJ Augustin the savior? Like, what's happening?
we could talk about it for a few minutes if you want. So basically, I mean, I'm going to take you back. This is going to sound ridiculous now, but
wait.
the logic from everyone involved, which, by the way, I do feel like the Lakers did Bron a little dirty, like where they were like kind of like, "Hey, LeBron wanted all this to happen." You know what I mean? Like they like him and Rich Paul tied Rob Pelinka up to a chair and put a cell phone to his ear to call Tommy Shepard in Washington to make the deal. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, they didn't all agree to it. Like, yeah, okay, let's do it. That their theory was, because the options were clearly there was a Buddy Hield trade in place for Kuzma, I believe, if I recall correctly, which would have helped. Bron with a great shooter. We know that makes a lot of sense. But Buddy's not like a defender. Like he's just he's a shooter. Like, he's a great volume shooter, but that's it. And then the other deal they had that Bron, the other guy Bron wanted, was DeRozan, but the Lakers didn't want to go a third year, which is why he took the 3 years in Chicago. And you probably could have questioned that fit early on too. But I've talked about this on my radio show. At the time I remember discussing and saying, I like the DeRozan fit better because I just don't know if Russ is going to be able to acquiesce to the way that you need to play with LeBron. So, and I feel like DeRozan is more of a chameleon that way, right? Like, he can play with almost anybody. Like, yeah. I don't think that that's a huge issue. And everyone always was like, well, only in the mid-range, but really outside of Anthony Davis, there's not really another player on the Lakers that likes to shoot in the mid-range anyway, so it's fine. And they didn't want to do that because the Lakers wanted to preserve cap space for 23 when LeBron's a free agent and they can kind of redo the team or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So they decided to go with Russ. And the logic was, well, we're going to recreate the big three in Miami. And my initial response to that was,
Laughter.
and I was having a private conversation with someone, and which I've talked about, so I'm not mentioning who it was, but I had a conversation with somebody about this, someone that was tangentially involved, let's just call it. They weren't directly involved. And when they said that to me, I was like, wait, but Russ isn't as good as Dwayne. Like, there's that. Maybe he's more athletic at this stage, but he's certainly not the defender that Dwayne was. Even at that stage, like, Dwayne was still a much better defender. And Dwayne had shown you, right, like, that glimpses of, he could be a great cutter to the basket and play off the ball a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, Russ has never shown a propensity to be able to mesh with someone when they have the ball in their hands and be efficient doing it, right? Like, it's why KD left. And so, like, for all the crap KD takes, he saw this coming a mile away. You know what I mean? Like, years ago. It's why he left the Golden State. So anyway, so that was my first thing. And then they were, the notion was, well, Anthony Davis is like a better version of Chris Bosh. And I'm like, right, but Anthony Davis isn't available as much as Chris Bosh was available back then. Like, that's not a small thing either. But yes, I mean, clearly he's a more talented basketball player because he's a freak of nature athletically. And I did say, but he's not the shooter that Chris was either. Like, Chris was a money shooter, particularly in the mid-range. Whereas Anthony has struggled in the mid-range and he's been streaky on threes or whatever.
Only in the bubble. I mean, the bubble was
right,
ridiculous.
Which was the perfect scenario for him, right? Like, just he could only focus on basketball and it was good and right, it worked out. So I had my issues with it, but I got sold on it, right? Like, well, I guess, whatever. And my theory on it was this. LeBron can play with anybody, like, outside of Isaiah Thomas. You know what I mean? Like that, other than that ridiculous experiment after Kyrie got traded with Isaiah Thomas where they shipped him out, a month or two later or whatever it was. I remember, like, do you remember, like, LeBron hit like a game winner in Cleveland when Isaiah Thomas was there? Do you remember this? And, like, he went and jumped in the arms of everyone, particularly Jetty Osman, and, like, ran right past Isaiah Thomas. And I was like, oh, he's getting traded for sure. Yeah. Like, that is, like, so obvious. So I thought, yeah, like, Russ can make it work. Like, Russ is older now. He's got to get it. But no, it didn't work. He didn't get it. And it's been the worst possible fit. I never thought I would say to myself that a star player, at least coming into it, he's not a star anymore now, obviously, but a star player, a top 75 player of all time, could not play with LeBron James. I would, no way in my wildest dream.
Worst case scenario, like, every basketball nerd, we kind of put up our glasses and we say everything wrong with spacing and how all the
but Johnny,
it's been that.
Johnny, I get it, but nobody thought they'd be the 10 seed. Like,
no.
I thought they'd
what
miss
I'm
the
saying
playoffs.
is that, like, ridiculous basketball doomer.
And it wasn't. For me, it wasn't just the Russ thing. Like, the Russ thing, I never thought it was going to work out. Fine, you think you have this big three. Anthony Davis isn't going to be able to play the whole season. Bron is not the same LeBron that can carry Mo Williams to the NBA Finals. And also, the league is just better. Like, just all-star Mo Williams. And then it wasn't even that. All right, fine. It was what you gave up for Russell Westbrook.
Yes,
like,
you gave up all your depth. All your
bunch
depth
of good NBA players, and you replaced them with old NBA players and NBA players who are so one-dimensional they don't fit anywhere else.
Too many specialists. Yes, way too many.
These guys were getting kicked off of other teams left and right, but all of a sudden Malik Monk's the savior.
Right.
Avery Bradley, like I said last night on my show, bagging groceries, and he's in the starting lineup. Trevor Ariza, we didn't want him anywhere near the Heat.
Too many former Heat players from last year.
Oh, my. Former Heat players that were on a bad Heat team that we hated last year. And they brought him over to the Lakers, and everybody's like, Kendrick Nunn is going to save the day. And I just when I saw what they put around those guys, I said, Carmelo, Dwight Howard, DeAndre, like, maybe in 2012 this is a really great team, but it's 2022. Like, the roster construction was awful.
Yeah, I was never a fan of what they built around those three guys, but I wasn't big on the three, and then I was kind of convinced, like, well, let's see what it looks like, right? Like, and I'm not even joking, dude. 8 games into the season, okay? I went on my radio show and started the show saying, I have made a huge mistake here. Okay. Like, you don't hear me a lot say I've made a monster mistake. I have made a huge mistake here. And it's funny. People are calling you, you're an alarmist. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm just like, every day I just kept repeating, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. This is not going to work. Because that's me, dude. For better or worse, right? Like I'm generally someone that, I'm not a hot take artist, but I can have a strong opinion about it. I didn't have a super strong opinion about it, but I felt like, yeah, look, individually, those three guys are still good. I didn't think Russ's drop would be this precipitous. Like, yeah, I didn't think it would be that. So that's where I really erred. And yeah, I mean, LeBron is 37 years old. He needs help now. You know what I mean? Like, let's be real.
They've also had no improvement out of THT. Like, he hasn't. I think that was the other part of it.
Yeah, there's been, if anything, a little bit of a regression, I feel like, this season. Yeah. And he's someone that I think can be a good player in this league. So he's got tools.
So the Kobe comparisons were overblown, though.
Kobe to who?
You don't remember the THT Anthony Davis Kobe Shaq comparison?
No, I never heard anybody say that.
Lakers Twitter was
out there.
No,
they also say Kendrick Nunn's a good
nobody that I
defender.
interact with ever said that. No. But I think he's going to be a good player. I just think here's what I mean. If I were, he's not in a position to ask for a trade. But if his agent is Rich Paul. Like, if I were Rich Paul, I'm not. He's way smarter than I am. I'd probably be like, can we get THT to a team where he can play more? Because he needs to grow, right?
How can he not play more on this team? Like,
what's that?
How can he not play more on this Lakers team? Like, Stanley Johnson came off the street and was starting.
I know. Well, he also got hurt. I don't think that helped.
The lack of shooting is really tough.
Yeah, and it's streaky for sure. And he's pretty good he's a good defender, actually. And he's actually not bad with the ball in his hands because he can get to the basket and do stuff around the basket. But I think like Vogel may have lost trust in him because of the shooting being so streaky. And look, Frank's playing for his job, man. I ain't mad at Frank for doing anything he's been doing, right? Like, Laker fans are crushing him. I'm like,
what do you want him to do?
Right. That's my question. What do you want him to do? He's played 29 different lineups. He's searching for anything right now.
You can't. There's no combination of trash is gonna work out. Like, it's bad option after bad option.
It's bad option
it's like
after bad option.
Dwight Howard sits, you got DeAndre Jordan. Trevor Ariza sits, you got Stanley Johnson. Like, it's just bad options all over, up and down that roster.
Yeah, and I've defended Frank a ton, and
he's
I've gotten to know him.
This is not his fault.
No way, dude. The roster construction is the biggest issue if we're doing like a blame pie, like, his slice is way smaller than all the roster construction stuff. Yeah. Well, or Pelinka and LeBron and AD, because those guys, Pelinka makes no bones about it that he consults them on everything, basically.
As he should.
Sure, I agree.
As you should.
But this is just a lost season for them, and they're going to have to kind of. I get why they didn't. Excuse me, I almost burped. I get why they didn't. They didn't. Well, I was trying to hold it in because I've been drinking this carbonated drink. I get why they didn't do anything at the deadline. Like, John Wall, yeah, maybe you have incremental, like, you're better slightly or incrementally, but what you want to do is package those picks that you have, 27 and 29, which will probably be valuable, and then try to use that to get off Russ to get more functional players, right? Like, I think that is their best bet, and just hope for health with AD and LeBron.
I'm giving up the Bronny pick? They could use that to take Bronny and can't get LeBron back for another year.
No. Bronny, I've done Bronny games. Here's what I'll tell you about Bronny. Because I did one game. He had one game on ESPN too. And I saw him play as a freshman and a sophomore at their gym. And he's pretty good. Like, he's 17 years old or whatever. I don't know if he's an NBA player.
Yeah, it's tough to know.
He's definitely a college player, like a good Division I college player right now. Here's the thing about Bronny. He's smaller, obviously, than Bron, but he's now put on like he looks like a college player, like, would be built, like, muscle wise and muscle tone. He's got a good shot. Like, he's got a better shot at that age than Bron did. You know what I mean? Like, but he's not the physical specimen that LeBron was. He's really smart with the ball. and he plays defense like he's like really smart, like at anticipating. He took a ton of charges in the game that I was doing on ESPN2 at Staples Center. He's going to be pretty good. Like, I don't know if he's an NBA player. He's going to need to take another leap to be an NBA player, but that's possible. He's only 17 years old and he hasn't grown into his body. But back just quickly with the Lakers to wrap it up. Not Frank's fault. I mean, Laker fans bitch at me about it, the defense being like in the 20s or whatever. I'm like, bro, Frank Vogel historically has been a really good defensive coach. Like, he didn't just forget how to play defense. You know,
the defense is bad, it ain't Frank Vogel's fault.
It's okay.
Like
Kendrick Nunn's coming to save the day, according to them.
Why do you do these things? Why do you do these things?
Because that's what Laker fans say. We go in their spaces and we laugh at them.
Nobody actually believes that.
No, they no. George, boots on the ground. They do.
Boots on the ground.
Alf and I are the boots on the Twitter streets.
They say I mean, their thing they say is that he is a really, really good defender. Yeah. And that's the funny shit.
Nobody knows that. I mean, anyone that says that never watched him play. Like,
he's one of the worst defenders I've ever seen.
He was not a good. Well, he's not big enough to be a good defender or like agile enough.
He just dies.
Nobody dies on a screen like that motherfucker. He is the mosquito of the NBA, like just dying on screens left and fucking right. Like he doesn't even try to get around the screen.
Yeah, we'll soon.
He just hits.
He's a streaky scorer. Like he's a decent bench player. Like I don't want to trash him. Like he's a decent bench option.
He'll be fine somewhere else. He's not saving them. All right, George. To close out the show, what are your thoughts on the sanctions on Ukraine? Do you think I'm just kidding? George, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have anything you want to plug on the way out?
Oh, yes, I do actually. I rarely do, but I am I'm like super excited because Saturday I'm calling my first ever regular season NBA game on radio for ESPN Radio with Tim Legler. I'm doing Warriors-Lakers, which is the ABC game that Mike Breen and that group usually call. But I want to do play-by-play. I started doing college football this year, and clearly I wanted to do the NBA. So they've given me a slate of games here to end the regular season, and the first one is then. And I get to work with Legs, which is pretty awesome, right? Like, he's amazing. Nobody teaches the game, I think, better than him at my place. So I'm super stoked to work with him. And so if you're, near a radio or like Sirius, and you can listen on ESPN Radio or in your local market or here in Miami, I don't think there's an ESPN affiliate in Miami, but you can listen on the app, on the ESPN app too. And you can put it on your Bluetooth in your car or listen at home through your smart speaker or whatever. But if you watch the game, you can have the sound on. You'd probably have to pause it though to sync it up because the stream is behind of like a minute or two. But I'll be calling the game, and it's my first game. I've done Summer League, I've done G League, but they're allowing me to call my first ever NBA game, and I'm really, really, really excited about it.
It's great when
I've heard you on Summer League with Dan Dockich.
Yeah.
Yes,
you were right, George. You were right.
I was right.
You were right.
I tweeted at him when
that
list came out, and I said, I think I won the argument. So.
Shout out to George. Shout out to everybody. Listen, I love when Miami's on the broad. Like when Mark Jones is talking about 8th Street and the old Miami Arena, I'm like, man, these are my people.
Yo, Mark Jones and I love that. We always laugh. Like we'll do games together, or I'll see him the next time, and it's not a Miami game, like or whatever. But and we just will howl about things he says. He actually, what was this thing he said a couple of weeks ago? He said. He was talking about some player who's playing really well and is up for like a contract. He's like, the price of brick has gone up. And I'm like, on national television? Like Mark Jones is out here wilding out. Like it's crazy. I love
George,
it.
Mark Jones and Doris is like, for me, that's it. I want that. I listen, Breen is the voice of the NBA, but when you do a Heat game, if I can't watch Eric Reed, I love Mark Jones and Doris. That's
yeah. I mean, look, he lives in Broward County. Although he's bi-coastal these days because he's been doing the Sacramento Kings game, so he's got places on the West Coast too. But and look, she's the GOAT, man. She's the queen. Like, I mean, come on, like I mean, but to your point, Mike Breen. Let me tell you something. Look, I work with a lot of nice people on those games. I actually feel like it's like a cool little family working on those games. But like Mike Breen, when you want to talk about salt of the earth type people, okay, like just an incredible human being. Like this dude, I'll never forget it. Like my first game was with him. It was him and Van Gundy, not Mark. Mark wasn't doing the game. And I knew him because he used to come on my radio show in Miami when LeBron was there a ton. And he was just like, hey, man, excited to work with you. And I'm like, you're excited to work with me? Like, are we serious here? And like, he's like, if you know, we were working with like an old school producer back that day. And he's like, you know, such and such is a little old school. So sometimes he may not go to the reporter as often as maybe we would want. So it's like, if he gives you any stuff, just text me and I'll work it in. I'll work you in too. And I was like, are we serious here? Like, this is incredible. Like, just such a nice dude. I'll give you another quick example.
He looks it.
I did a game with him the night before Le Batard's wedding. It was Golden State, Boston. And this was the year Steph was out and Clay was out. It was just Draymond. And I'm sitting there courtside, and it was like the third quarter, and Draymond is getting subbed out. And it's a tight game with him and with the Boston Celtics and the Warriors at Chase Center. And Steve Kerr like grabs Draymond, is like embracing him and like talking to him. And he like patted him on the back, and he's like kind of giving him like a pep talk or something, whatever it was. And I noticed it, right? So at the end of the third quarter, I was supposed to interview Kerr. And before we went on, because we taped those things, spoiler alert. And in the
so you're not on the court while they start playing the third quarter?
No, we're not. Yes, clearly. I mean, if you're smart, you figured that out. But but yes, we tape them as soon as we go to break. And so I asked Kerr before we taped. I said, hey, I saw you talking to Draymond. Do you mind if I ask you what that's all about? He said, yeah, sure, no problem. And then I asked him, and he just told me, look, I just want to tell him it's been a tough season already. And this is like November. And he's like, and I just want to tell him how much I appreciate his leadership and love him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was like look, I do a lot of those interviews. I feel like I try my best to get like a real answer out of these guys. And it's hard because a lot of times some guys won't give it to you. Right? It's not that the reporters don't try. It's just that they're not willing participants all the time. Although the coaches I generally work with do a pretty good job for me. And Kerr gave me this great answer, right? And I get back to my position, and I have a text from Mike Breen, because he can clearly see and watch while we're taping it. And it says, George, you are so good at this. Great job.
He's so nice.
He's the nicest person ever, man. So Jonesy's my guy, Door's my guy. But Mike Breen is the voice of the NBA.
No question. Mike Breen's the voice, and it's really nice that he does all the finals and all that good stuff.
He's like, yes. So if you, not only is he great at his job, and bang is one of the greatest calls ever. Just know that while you're watching one of the greatest call the sport, that he's also a terrific human being.
Knicks fans don't deserve him.